All right, we are back and we are going to do chapters 13 to 15 now. You notice the same goes with chapter 13 in terms of diction. Dickens starts this chapter with a few of the words pertaining to the law. And this is a chapter that has a lot of judgments also to be passed into it. Joe and Pip go to Miss Havisham, which is kind of a depressingly funny, humorous, sarcastic, absurd. You can take it for whatever it is. But Joe and Estelle and Miss Havisham find themselves together. Earlier, Pip had wondered what Estella would think of Joe. So when Pip shows up, Estella sits kind of next and behind Miss Havisham and looks at Joe with all sorts of amazement. I don't know how to explain it. I don't have a very good picture, but if you are sitting at your house looking out your window and a whale walked up the street, that's probably how Estella looks at Joe. Completely shocked. But she also makes it noticeable that to Pip that she is admiring and enjoying every scene because Joe looks like a piece of work. And Joe notices. So every time Miss Havisham asks Joe a question, Joe turns around and talks to Pip, which is kind of weird, awkward, and embarrassing. But Estella likes it. At the end of this, Miss Havisham gives them money and tells Pip, page 107, Pip asks, Am I to come again, Miss Havisham? I asked. No. Gargery is your master now. Gargery, one word. So Pip is cut off from getting to see Estelle, which is why he loves to come here. But notice how we know this. Page 108. There's a paragraph here, I don't know what page that is in your other books. But it says how Joe got out of the room. This is out of Miss Havisham's room. I have never been able to determine. But I know that when he did get out, he was steadily proceeding upstairs instead of coming down. I'm sorry for laughing, but this is kind of sad and funny. We've talked about Dickens and absurdist humor. Joe comes out of the room and he can't tell if he's supposed to go up or down. So Dickens makes him go upstairs because he's supposed to go downstairs. Okay, so here we go. How Joe got out of the room, I have never been able to determine. But I know that when he did get out, he was steadily proceeding upstairs instead of coming down, and was deaf to all remonstrances until I went after him and laid hold of him. In another minute, we were outside the gate, and it was locked, and Estella was gone. Notice how Estella is the last thing Pip notices. Estella was gone. She drew them out the gate, she locked the gate, and he's alone. He feels empty because she's gone. I want to ask you a question. Imagine you're Pip. Imagine one of your friends is Estella, so in this case, not your friend. And this Estella makes a lot of fun of your parents. You know, we parents, we know, we get it. We are old and weird, except when we are paying your bills and buying you shoes. We get it. But anyway, imagine that somebody made so much fun of your parents. Would you still want to see that person? This is a question, a social question Dickens raises here. But Pip notices that Estella was gone. Now, something happened on page 108, 109, at the very bottom. Okay. And wishing, pursued Joe, with another fixed look at me. I'm sorry, I'll have to go a little bit further up here. Well, cried my sister, this is after they get home. This way I have to say, I have to go further up. When they get home, something unusual happens, and I want you to notice this. Well, cried my sister, addressing us both at once, and what happened to you? I wonder you condescend to come back to such poor society as this. I am sure I do. Miss Havisham, said Joe with a fixed look at me, like an effort of remembrance, made it very particular that we should give her white compliments or respects, Pip. Compliments, said I. Which that were my own belief, answered Joe. Her compliments to Mrs. J. Gargery. Much good they'll do me, observed my sister, but rather gratified too. And wishing, pursued Joe with another fixed look at me, like another effort to remembrance, that the state of Miss Havisham's health was such as would have allowed, were it, Pip? Of her having the pleasure, I added. Of ladies' company, said Joe, and drew a long breath. Well, cried my sister with a mollified glance at Mr. Pumblechook, she might have had the politeness to send that message at first, but it's better late than never. And what did she give you, Rantipole, here? She gave him, said Joe, nothing. Mrs. Joe was going to break out, but Joe went on. What she give, said Joe, she give to his friends. And by his friends, were her explanation, I mean into the hands of his sister, Mrs. J. Gargery. Them were her words, Mrs. J. Gargery. She may not have known it, added Joe with an appearance of reflection, whether it were Joe or George. What has happened to Joe? Did that really happen? Did Miss Havisham say, here is some money for your wife, and when you get there, you tell her if I wasn't sick, I would have invited her to come. What did Joe do here? He lies. For the first time, Joe doesn't just lie once, he lies a lot. Is it funny? Kind of. Is it necessary? Kind of, because of who Mrs. Joe is. But at the same time, notice how every time some good person runs into Miss Havisham and Estella, he or she develops some bad behaviors, some antisocial behaviors. Pip got there, he was innocent and common, and he didn't want to be anymore. He was proud of being a blacksmith and he loved home, not anymore. Joe goes there and he comes home and lies to his wife for the first time. Something is happening to this. And then, of course, he surrenders the money to Mrs. Joe. On page 110, I want you to look at the way Dickens uses language here. They end up going to court because Pip has to sign what were called indentures. Those were legal papers to start your apprenticeship. A 7-year program where you would train for a job. You could not quit on the 4th year of your apprenticeship without paying a very, very stiff penalty to the person who was training you, because by then you would be very, very good at your work. So page 110, goodness knows, Uncle Pumblechook, said my sister, grasping the money, we are deeply beholden to you. That is, she thanks Mr. Pumblechook for the money. Never mind me, Mom, returned that diabolical cornchandler. A pleasure is a pleasure all the world over. But this boy, you know, we must have him bound. I said I would see to it, to tell you the truth. This is Mr. Pumblechook suggesting that Pip is now old enough to go and be apprenticed to Joe. Here's the problem. Pip has figured out he doesn't want to become a blacksmith. Pip has found out Estella doesn't like or respect blacksmiths. So Pip doesn't want to be. Now, who is suggesting he become a blacksmith? The guy who hates him the most. Look at the diction. We must have him bound. What are other words for the word bound? Tied would be one. You're bound by law. Do you get it? Arrested. Enslaved. So the next paragraph, they go to court. The justices were sitting in the town hall near at hand. And here we run into government not doing its job, page 110 at the bottom. The hall was a queer place, I thought, with higher pews in it than a church, with people hanging over the pews looking on, and with mighty justices, one with a powdered head, that's some white stuff they use in Britain, leaning back in chairs with folded arms, or taking snuff, or going to sleep, or writing or reading the newspapers. What were the justices doing? Everything but their job. Okay, so they go to the court system, and Pip is bound. He is officially going to become a blacksmith, the one career which Estelle has already made fun of. So he's not happy about this at all. So you have to read the last paragraph of chapter 13. They have gone home, and he says this. Finally, I remember that when I got into my little bedroom, I was truly wretched. The word wretched is a very strong word. I was miserable, devastated, and had a strong conviction on me that I should never like Joe Strayed. Notice he doesn't even dare to mention the business. It is so bad that he doesn't want to call it what it is. I should never like Joe Strayed. And notice the last line of chapter 13. I had liked it once, but once was not now. Pip will never like being a blacksmith. So chapter 14, this is really kind of a tough chapter in its own self. It is a transitional chapter. It's only 1.5 pages. Really, it's very short. But notice how powerful it is. Starts with, it is the most miserable thing to feel ashamed of home, isn't it? It is, to be ashamed of home. Because home is supposed to represent all the things we like and feel good about. For example, here I make a cup of tea, and that makes me feel good. I have my family, just all your pets and all those things you have, all those stuffed animals you keep at home, and you get to watch the different TV shows that you like, and you can let your guard down. Pip is miserable and ashamed of home. Then what? That creates the need for a better home. There may be black ingratitude in the thing, and the punishment may be retributive and well-deserved, but that it is a miserable thing, I can testify. And then he tells us about his home, and I have to read this paragraph because it is very important, the second paragraph. Home had never been a very pleasant place to me. We know that from the tickling and all those things, because of my sister's temper. But Joe had sanctified it, and I had believed in it. The word sanctified is very strong. Joe had made home holy. That's very strong. Okay, and he had believed it in the best parlor as a most elegant salon. I had believed in the front door as a mysterious portal of the temple of state, whose solemn opening was attended with a sacrifice of roast fowls. I had believed in the kitchen as a chaste, though not magnificent apartment. I had believed in the forge as the glowing road to manhood and independence. Within a single year, all this was changed. Now it was all coarse and common, and I would not have had Miss Havisham and Estelle see it on any account. Why does he hate home? Estelle and Miss Havisham. Okay, so chapter 14 is tough. And then he says this. I'm skipping 2 paragraphs here, okay? And he says this. Now, I'm sorry, the paragraph at the top of page 113. He says, how much of my ungracious condition of mind may have been my own fault? How much Miss Havisham's? How much my sister's? is now of no moment to me or to anyone. He's saying it doesn't matter whether it was because of Miss Havisham, myself, or me, or my sister, or whoever. The change was made in me. The thing was done. Well or ill done, excusably or inexcusably, it was done. I had hated home. That was not going to change. I had hated being a blacksmith. That was not going to be done. That was not going to change. In other words, those feelings had been forged and hammered into reality. He wasn't going to change how much he hated home. And it says, Joe was faithful. He wasn't. This is the bottom of page 113. He says, I never ran away and went for a soldier or a sailor. It was not because I had strong sense of virtue or industry, but because Joe had a strong sense of virtue and industry, that I worked with tolerable zeal against the grain. It is not possible to know how far the influence of any amiable, honest-hearted, duty-doing man flies out into the world, but it was very possible to know how it has touched oneself in going by. I know it right well that any good that intermixed itself with my apprenticeship came of plain contented Joe and not of relentlessly aspiring discontented me. People saying whatever good happened at home did not happen because of him, it happened because of Joe. So Joe is a much better person than Pip. Pip is telling us. And that is really a very sad situation, but that is the way it is. And then he tells us, what I wanted, who can say? How can I say when I never knew? What I feared, what I dreaded was that in some unlucky hour, I, being at my dirtiest and commonest, should lift my eyes and see Estella looking in at one of the wooden windows of the forge. So he just had this picture of fear, this phobia of Estella coming and looking through a crack in the forge and seeing Pip there dirty and sooty and sweating. He couldn't stand that, and therefore he ends the chapter 14 by saying, after that, when we went into supper, the place, notice it doesn't call it home anymore. It has changed the name. It's not home, it's the place. Can you imagine if you call your home the place? Because you don't like it. The place and the meal would have a more homely look than ever. What does the word homely mean? Look up the definition of the word homely. Dickens is trying to tell you something. Vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. And I would feel more ashamed of home than ever in my own ungracious breast. So, in chapter 13 and 14, Pip is sick and tired of home, and he doesn't want to become an apprentice to Joe. He doesn't want to be a blacksmith. That will bring us to the end of those two chapters. Small, but very significant. And then I will do chapter 15 and 16 together. Okay? All right?